hotter the conflict, the greater the triumph.
A fierce serpent may be overcome by a swarm of ants.
Lead me, follow me, or get out of my way. Age wrinkles the body, quitting wrinkles the soul.
Battle buddies.
Battle buddies.
What type of room are you in right now?
Oh, I'm in my parents' bedroom. Yep.
Are you you're in Reading right now?
Yeah, we're in Reading. We just drove from Oregon this morning.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice, dude. Look at you with your dedication, dude.
Yes. Yeah, came back from Oregon just in time. I had to help my dad set up and mount a TV. Got that done. Got the kids down. Now it's time to talk about Caesar.
Was it a large TV?
Yeah, it was like 75 inches. Thing's awesome.
Yeah. Yes. Very large TV. Yes.
Check this out.
Tell me.
Yeah, in Oregon. So I've been hanging out in Reedsport. Shout out to Reedsport and all 16 of you that live there.
Yeah, shout out to that place.
Yeah, great coastal town. I'm trying to get into fly fishing, and I got to go fly fishing with the former mayor of Reedsport, who took me to all the streams. And I won't tell you which stream or which spots he may or may not have shown me, because that's a big deal.
All right.
Let's just say I learned some spots.
Okay, that's cool.
More, I learned how to get my fly fishing rod and line stuck in trees in some very nice spots.
So it's your fishing game is almost as good as your golfing game.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I kind of have a knack for fly fishing because it turns out like I think inattentive things like I like finding like a rhythm. That's why I like guitar, right? Like you just like find a pattern and play it over and over again. Well, fishing is like you kind of get stuck in the mode, and he's like, you kind of have that down. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot I'm supposed to do other things other than just like sit here and just cast at this one motion over and over again. This was releasing a lot of dopamine for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. You're there's some genes deep in you where there was a fisherman on some coastal Italy town where you had a fisherman in your family.
Both of my my grandpa, his parents came over, right? Both of their parents were fishermen in the same town of Sicily. So like, but it's gnarly in Sicily because they would have to fish at night, and then times are so rough right before they started like kind of like forcing and begging people to leave because they couldn't feed them all. They would have to fish all night and then like mend nets and like farm and stuff during the day. Like I don't know when they slept. I was like doing the math. Like, you can't work all night and all day. That's all the time you have.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
We caught some crab, caught a lot of crab.
Did you get to eat it?
Yeah, that's what we do every year. So we have a little river boat, and they installed like a crabbing line on it. And so we go and drop our pots in the ocean and pick them up. It's super fun.
Was it delicious?
Yeah. Actually, this year we gave away our crab, but I'm sure they'll catch some more and bring it down.
Is it Dungeness?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the best crab in the world, dude.
Yeah. Hannah and I are like, usually I think of myself as a peasant, but when I walk through Costco and I see how much the crab costs, I'm and they pay for that. I just gave her a little knowing look.
You fools! Here we are. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Battle Buddies. Me and Kevin have a life on summer vacation, but here we are, dedicated to the listener, just trying to bring you content, because nobody's ever studied Julius Caesar before, so we're bringing it to you live from Kevin's parents' bedroom and my office place where I play video games, not to hide from my family.
Different things.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we're in it.
If it's called the penultimate, which is the one before the final episode, what do you call this? The ultimate?
The ultimate.
The ultimate.
Yeah.
Okay. The climax.
The climax.
Julius Caesar is finally gonna.
Oh, he for sure has already done that a bunch. But yeah, we're gonna let's just hop on in.
Do it, dude. I'm ready. I'm so ready.
Yeah, this was intense. Like writing it, just because I've been in Oregon, so I was in Idaho fishing a lot too, and just like one with nature. And I was reading, like, fisherman books. I read a great fly fisherman book called The Curtis Creek Manifesto, and it's like, you need to get in touch with your primal, like, inner instinct. And I was like, yeah. But I still don't like Caesar, I don't think. I don't know. I'm going back and forth. That's one of the things I want to talk about.
No, I say fuck Caesar.
A little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I have Gaul in me, so I have to say that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So here we are, folks. The ultimate showdown is within our grasp. What a long, strange trip it has been. If this is the first episode you are listening to in the Caesar series, you might want to start with part 1. But all these books do work decently as standalone campaigns, D&D one-shots, if you will. We may have some D&D in our future, right, Spencer? Woo.
100%.
Yep. Basically, just a short recap, Caesar has been fighting with all of Gaul for almost a decade at this point. A couple of key points to keep in mind from our previous episodes is that the Roman army is half construction worker, half soldier, and that the heartbeat of Gaul is growing louder and stronger with every step Caesar takes into their dark forest. Now let's get back into the action. And for sources, we've already talked about the main source, which is Caesar himself talking about his campaign. It's fantastic. For this episode, I also got out the West Point Military History Series.
No way.
Yeah, and I took some pictures of it, so we'll be looking at their images. And if you Google some like maps, their image pops up. So like this is what people look at for it.
No shit.
Yeah, I looked at a couple other ones, but they were at Hannah's grandparents. So Hannah's grandfather was a history teacher and like a good historian. So he had lots of books I was flipping through and got a couple little things from it.
Awesome.
Okay, we left off. We finished book 5. We will cover book 6 pretty quickly because I want to focus on book 7. Really, I just want to focus on the end of book 7. And I almost like scrapped everything just to focus on it. But it's not fun unless we do certain things. Like we got to get there the right way. We're almost there. So we got to get there the right way. We got to finish strong.
Feed us, Kevin.
Yeah.
Feed us. We're hungry.
From my reading, it looks like Caesar lost quite a few men from the campaigns in Britain and what is now called Norway. Ambiorix, leader of future Norway, took out the commander Tityrus and most of his troops. And we were talking about that, right? He took out like 3,000 troops, probably 3,000 to 6,000 because he took out a legion. That's a lot. Caesar took an almost identical action to that you can do in Crusader Kings 3 to fix this issue. This is a big issue for Caesar, right? He's down soldiers. And Spencer and I have been getting into this game called Crusader Kings 3. I'm really happy that I was playing it because it made this part make sense. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense what's about to happen. He made contact in Rome with his boy Pompey. Pompey's kind of like his daddy. And then he sent his officers. Then they levied 3 new legions to join their army back up in Gaul. It's very easy for us to dismiss this type of thing in America, right? Because we have one centralized army. When we have different branches, but we have it's an army, right? It's our military. And we can do these sorts of things easily, perhaps even too easily, right? How easy is it for us to send soldiers to other places? Remember, Caesar is a political general and has to use political means to increase his troop sizes. Also, a lot of people want Caesar to fail because he either owes them money or they are jealous of his power. That came up in some of the other military books I was looking at in Hannah's grandpa's library. They were definitely talking about he couldn't go home. They were definitely jealous of him, like because he's the closest thing to an emperor they've had in a long time, and they wanted him to fail.
You were also saying that he has debts, right? There's some debts that he needs to pay.
Yeah, and Pompey is the only reason why he can even get these troops because nobody else can fund him. Support him with the money.
Man, dude, that's cool to live in a time before cell phones when like a debt collector like can't call you. And, like, where's Caesar? It's like, I don't know. Where is
Caesar? Not gonna fucking go home, right? That's his plan every winter. Like, I'm just gonna go to Italy for a while. It sounds good.
Yeah, dude. When I was poor for a really long time in my life, I would see I got to memorize the debt collector's number, and I was like, not answering that one today.
Not today. That's
Still
not
don't have money. Still don't have money.
All right. let's see. We can play the hypothetical game. So here we're going to take a quick caveat because I want to stress this point. I think it's really easy to skip over this. And I don't, of all the podcasts I've listened to on this series, or just like the different things I read, no one's really focusing on this, and that's fine. But I think that there's like a hypothetical game you can play that's pretty fun. And we can play it just for a minute. If Caesar was unable to secure Pompey's support here, the heartbeat of Gaul would still have called for war against Caesar's slavery. That was already in the works, right? I was calling that back in like book 3. I was like, Gaul is getting pissed. And then by book 4, they're like, what are you doing in Britain? And book 5, Amberux comes up and is like, I think I could take him. And so people are starting to turn on him. He's having to like do things he doesn't want to do. And he needs these extra troops, and he gets a lot of them. So if he didn't get them, he would have been defeated, I think. Rome would likely not have turned into an empire, or at least not as quickly without Caesar, because right above them, there'd be thousands, like 250,000, 300,000 Gauls soldiers that are pissed that Rome tried to do this. So they're not turning into an empire any day soon.
So it's fair to say that without Julius Caesar, like Rome would have just splintered into all these like city-states, essentially, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure historians are like, you're really dumb. They would have been able to survive that. They may have been able to survive that. But Caesar plays a big part in them becoming an empire based on the momentum he gains from this victory that comes up right now.
Okay.
But without that, I don't know. I think it's at least a hypothetical you could play to say, like, and a lot of the senators, they didn't like that Caesar was obviously trying to jock to become an emperor. Like, they didn't like that, because I was saying, and this time period is really unique, and it's fun to study because like the Gauls don't want kings either. Like, no one wants kings anymore. Like, we already did that shit, right? We did like pharaoh kings, we did god kings. Wasn't fun for all the normal folk. And so we want more like city-state type of things.
Yep.
We want spread out governments, which
makes sense to me.
Absolutely. Like, yeah. So I could see maybe those people got the power then because Caesar failed.
The Mayan Empire was also similar. They had city-states. They didn't have like one huge king of like an empire.
Right.
Because most of it's like working class people. So why the fuck would you want somebody like that?
And, Brutus would have died. He was a big deal. Pompey would have been a huge, fail in his campaign. I don't know what he would have done. Gaul would have thrived. And without a Roman Byzantine Empire for the next 1,000 whatever years, like they go on forever, right? The entire world would look very different. Does the United States still base its laws off of Roman ones? Does the United States even exist? It's impossible to know any of this, of course, but I think it does illustrate how much of our lives are directly and indirectly impacted by very human choices made thousands of years ago. And just as a quick aside, before we talk about it, some of the Roe v. Wade opinions and rulings are based on these old Roman-ass laws.
Interesting.
Yeah, both sides used Roman laws. Like that when the Supreme Court one was leaked last year, before they overturned it. I read through it, and he was citing like Blackburn or whatever, who was citing a bunch of Roman laws.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, interesting. I don't know enough about it, but I will hopefully one day to have an opinion on the matter. But that's crazy.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, that's wild.
And I just like that. I mean, I don't know if I like it, but it is studying history in school. It feels so like prescriptive and like systemic, right? Everything feels very systemic. Like, and then this country rose to economic power. But we're talking about Caesar writing a letter to Pompey being like, please, dude, I know you've already raised a lot of money for me, but can you just do it again? And I'll send you some officers that are pretty chill. And if you give them the money, they can get some troops back for me.
We gonna need one more gang.
Yeah, right?
Need and one more gang.
And it worked. And that ends up writing a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for the future. And I keep saying this, but it continues to be true. When we, study different battles within different periods of the Roman Empire, which will help bring us some context to even, what's going on here. But with everything that we know now, it's pretty interesting for you what you're basically saying is like, think about the impact that Julius Caesar has had on the world, not just at that time, but still to this day.
This day, when he's writing a letter from his camp, right? Like that's not an economic system that they had developed. That was just like a human moment. Just like, I need you to be a bro about this.
Anybody can relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody. Mm-hmm.
Think about like your ripples, right? Like things that you do, how much do they impact? I think about that like with students all the time. Like, I wonder how this one plays out in 50 years or 100.
Totally.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
Okay. So yeah, that's my little caveat. We'll go back to book 6 now. Book 6 also reminded us that the Germans were different from the Gauls. This will become a big feature of book 7. So let's briefly review some of the differences. We talked about this in, I think, our second episode. It was our second or third episode. I went through the book, like Women Druids, and
yeah, that's fun.
That was a great book, and that taught us a lot about like, long hair Gauls versus short hair Gauls, all that kind of stuff. This is from Caesar. The Germans' mode of life differs greatly from that of the Gauls. The Germans neither have druids to preside over divine worship, nor do they pay heed to sacrifices. They regard as gods only those whom they see, and by whose help they are clearly benefited, namely the sun, Vulcan, and the moon. Of the other gods, they have not even by report. Their whole life is spent in hunting and warlike pursuits. From childhood, they inure themselves to toil and hardship. Those who remain unmarried for the longest time win greatest praise among their people. It's odd, So they believe that their stature, strength, and muscles are promoted by this practice. They consider it most disgraceful to have had relationship with a woman before their 20th year. Yeah, that one checks out. I think that one could still be. Stop dating people younger than 20, creeps. I like that Germans are like these intense people back then, but they were like, is she even 20 yet? No. Hard pass.
Yeah, we're on the right side of history with this one.
That one aged well.
That's right.
There is
she even 20 yet?
Yeah.
You must wait a little longer.
There is no secrecy about the matter of sex, for men and women bathe together in rivers and wear skins of short cloaks of reindeer hide, which leave a great part of the body bare. I also like that. That part's fun.
I'm like imagining my ancestors with skirts made out of like deer skin, and they're just like prancing around with their thighs out. That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can dig it.
Yeah, I personally don't like, the prudish thing that's been the downward, like reading through ancient things, and they're like, yeah, we're just all hanging out here and we're bathing and it's fine. And then
totally
religion got so orthodoxy, and then it had some issues with that.
Yeah, and then now sex is super shameful, and you have to be scared to be a human. I don't like that. I'm speaking from experience, of course.
No, absolutely, right. And so and now we're parents, we're all like hyper aware of that kind of stuff now.
Totally.
You don't realize how much parents are thinking about that.
Yes.
Yeah. Back to this, though. Basically, the difference was that Gauls had very organized political and religious structures in their society that Germany seemed not to have, right? Because they didn't have the Druids. And we talked about the Druids. They were both like, I think it's incorrect to say that they were religious leaders or that they were political leaders. They were this weird combination of the two. Mm-hmm. And they had these like city states. And they each had like a formalized type of culture inside the city state. And Germany doesn't really seem to have that. Like they seem to actively avoid it, which is kind of badass.
That is.
And
very punk rock.
It is. And so I think because that part of the series so far, I've wondered like, why do we even call them different? Like, why aren't they just called Gauls too? And this is kind of why, like, this is a big difference. And we'll go into a tiny bit more of what makes them just so different. But we're also going to take this with a large grain of salt because Gaul was a big place of many subcultures. So this could just be the people that Caesar interacted with.
Right.
Germans also didn't really farm, so there wasn't as big of a need of a formalized government. See Guns, Germs, and Steel for a breakdown on how all that works. Basically, the more agriculture you have, the more you have to like figure out how to lock it up and then figure out how to disperse it and then figure out how you're going to get rich off of it. So that's a whole thing that comes with farming. And I think the Germans, in this mythology at least, is saying like, we don't like that necessarily. Therefore, the Germans also didn't really give a shit about things like permanent housing, which is really hard to conceptualize in modern America, where I'm on Zillow all the time, even though I'm not actively selling or buying my house. I'm like, what is this right now? Caesar Caesar finished the comparison by saying that Gauls were better than the Germans. The Gauls used to be better than the Germans. They got fat and lazy, and now they can't compete with them. I can't speak to if Caesar actually believed this or not, but there is definitely a narrative technique being used here to set up a Deus Machina for Caesar in this last book. Like the Germans are all of a sudden going to become like very, very important to our story. And when looking at it through this lens, even if he doesn't necessarily believe it, it just shows how much Caesar fucking sees and like how much he can figure out like how the next 2 years are going to go. Because he's planting this idea in book 6, like early on, and these reports that get shipped off to Rome. And he's like, by the way, it's important that you know who the Germans are because it's going to be a big deal later on. And it is a big deal later on. So even if this is just like a narrative technique, he calls it. Like he knows exactly what's about to happen. All right. How do you, kind of like a nice little history of Germany.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't like the whole. You said it was like an anti-politics going on in Germany. Like where the Gauls were super political, the Germans were not.
Yeah, they just their thing was war. Like
that's dope to me.
Yeah, they just wanted to like wage like they essentially like hunter-gatherer war. Like you have your circle, and then you would like the biggest disgrace would be not being able to like defend your circle. So you don't want too big of a circle. And you don't want to stay in that circle for too long because you're not growing crops. So why would you want to stay there? So there's like weird things like that pop up, which is fascinating for, year 50 of our civilization. 50.
Yeah. Interesting. They're kind of, it seems like to me that they're setting this up to make the Germans sound like barbarians, just like some brutal war savages type people.
Yeah, and I think that would play because of Germany's location to like the steppe, right? Like they're a stone's throw from the steppe, which will go all the way to the Mongols, and you can't kill them and you can't conquer them because they don't have homes and they hide their ancestral burial ground. And they're like, you don't know where that is, and so fuck you. And like that becomes a thing in ancient warfare.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see how this plays out.
Let's see how it plays out. Getting back to Ambiorix's war against Caesar, it basically doesn't go well. But in a surprise move, Caesar said of his victory, fortune plays a large part in all affairs, and especially in warfare, which he continues later on in this book when he says, here one may learn how great is the power of luck in war, and how great are the accidents it brings. Caesar defeats Ambiorix and his Eborons by telling everyone that they can plunder the shit out of them. He just tells everybody. He's like, spread the news, friends. You get to plunder the Eborons, who are pretty successful.
It's like when you're in a grocery store and you're figuring out when the right time to loot is. Yeah. Like a car smashes through and you're like, now's the time to loot. Everybody loot.
Yes. The Germans got very excited about this because I think the Eborons are close to one of the German camps or something. So they sent out thousands of soldiers to start pillaging, just like Caesar wanted. But they also ended up attacking a lot of the Romans. And so that was like really good just desserts for me. Like, yeah, you asked for that. You literally asked for them to do this.
Yeah.
Considering that in book 2, you fight Ariovistus and kick him back and say, no Germans ever cross this river again. And then they just let a bunch of them cross.
Do we have an idea of how many Romans died because of it, or?
No, it's not exactly clear because he does kind of his vague stuff. And it's hard because he's also gaining troops during this.
Got it.
From like, then he'll gain more troops again at the start of the next book. So he's gaining a lot of troops while he's losing troops. But
okay. It's expendable. And it seems like just like, oh, we lost some, but we're gaining some too.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. At the end of the book, Caesar has lost a lot of men. He had to investigate a lot of Gallic conspiracies. He lost men, and shit was a little confusing with the Germans. But they seem to be useful for Caesar. Like he hasn't totally given up on Germans, even though they like attacked his little camp that he left, and he didn't like that. But he's still like, I kind of like these guys. Okay, that's book 6. Things I didn't cover. Ambiorix, he doesn't die, which is cool. He loses, which is bad. But
you're talking about Ambiorix?
Yeah, Ambiorix. Sorry.
Okay.
Ambiorix. He ends up being able to survive. He like runs away into exile. So he didn't get it.
Whoa, so he didn't die.
Nope.
Whoa, exile.
Yeah.
Whoa, so he's like doing a Yoda thing where he just goes off and becomes like a Jedi somewhere, and he's just like goes crazy by himself.
Yeah, I think it's like he escapes on horse while his camp is getting sacked or something like that with like one other guard. Like it was a close call, close shave.
Dang. I like, man, there's a movie in there somewhere.
There
Okay.
is,
Yeah.
and yeah, there is a total movie because I think like his uncle commits suicide out of disgrace. Like there's a whole bunch of shit that happens.
Oh my God. I'm just trying to think about the. It's funny because you definitely like, oh, an Ambiorix saying now he's down in the exile. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
So I have questions,
Yep.
but it doesn't, I mean, there's no written accounts by Ambiorix. So it's a lot of,
No, he had to hide for the rest of his days.
some Jedi shit.
Yes.
Damn. Okay. I wonder if, I mean, I literally am wondering if that's where George Lucas got the idea for like, what is it, Order 66?
Oh,
You know what I'm saying? Where all the like Jedi have to like go away and like hide, and then that's why Obi-Wan goes to Tatooine and just hides. I'm getting an Ambiorix vibe from like yeah, that's crazy.
Yep.
That's just crazy to me.
well, it also tells like how human of a story that is.
Yeah.
Because I think he was like a beloved leader. Like he was successful. He's the first non-Briton Gaul that's like slapped Caesar hard. Like you don't get to do this for free anymore.
Did he have kids? Do you know?
I don't know. We don't know a ton about him. Even his name Ambiorix means like the king of all, or like the together king, is something like that. So even his name was like reclaimed by himself.
Sure.
So we don't know a ton about him. I think he's supposed to be royalty of some kind, but I don't even know what that means for the Euborons, because we don't know that much about them, because Caesar kills a ton of these people, so their histories don't really survive.
Listeners, excuse me. If you know anybody who is a huge history buff and they have a bunch of information on Ambiorix, please hit us up on social media or email us. Our email is in the bio of our Spotify.
Yeah. Or if you're from Norway, love to hear from you.
Yeah, shout out to Game Changing History. Maybe he knows, our guy from Norway.
Oh, yeah.
I'll ask him.
You should. Okay. Let's get to book 7. Let's have some fun.
Let's do it.
The beating heart of Gaul was in full effect, and Caesar had to deal with it once and for all. According to Caesar, the Gauls have decided that their freedom is more valuable than their lives. It was better to be slain in battle than not to be able to recover their ancient renown in war and the liberty with which they had received from their forefathers. Then, after realizing they didn't have time to exchange hostages, they just took an oath that they would all do what needs to be done. Wait, aren't these guys supposed to be the barbarians? That feels honorable and like recency to just do like an oath like that.
Take on it.
They didn't do the hostages. Everybody does hostages. Everybody does it, right? That's what we've learned in this series. Everybody does hostages. Caesar does them, Gauls do them. That's how you do it. And they're like, we don't got time. Just be a bro. Show up.
Bro code.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Caesar also is starting to amass more troops from Italy. And it's a little confusing. I think basically Rome passes this like draft essentially, where like all young men have to become soldiers. And so then they send a bunch up north. I think that's how it works. It's hard. Okay.
History is hard.
History's hard. This next part is really fun though. Did a little math time.
Okay.
So I've talked about the beating heart of Gaul, right? That's like kind of my idea that I've had about like this like pulsing thing, both as like a narrative technique Caesar's implementing, but also as like this culture is being developed. Like all these separate city states are learning to kind of interact with each other in different ways, in more sophisticated ways. And the question that I have is, how does it work? Like, what are the pragmatics of it? Like, how does it actually function? And Caesar has quantified it a bit. He said information is passed from place to place through shouting. They shout. Like one farmer shouts at another farmer, and it continues that way.
Really?
Yep.
Hey!
Like, hey, hey, there's troops going over there. Did you hear about that? And the guy goes, no, I didn't hear about that. I'll pass that on. And then he goes and turns and shouts to the next guy.
That's a pretty hilarious visual. Like
Yes,
that's perspective humor to the max.
it's so good.
Hey, go tell Farmer Tony over there. That's hilarious. Okay.
He described it, and I did some of the math, and I estimate that Caesar has figured out that news travels at 54 miles per hour. Because he says that he gives buy this watch, this amount is traveled this many miles. And so I was doing a little bit of research on how long a watch is. And so basically 54 miles per hour is not slow. These guys are shouting.
Really?
Yeah. This is how once these Ambiorix, to me, being successful and showing that you do need to have military intelligence, and you do need to be able to think about these things and be able to do what is Caesar? He condemns Gaul early on because they can't survive a reverse, right? They can't survive if they ever get on the back foot in any of these engagements. And Ambiorix shows that they can if they actually give up some of their individualism and actually work together. And this is kind of that. All of a sudden, they already have the system in place. They didn't even really realize, and maybe they're weaponizing the system now. And maybe this is kind of the actual beating heart of Gaul, is they can just pass information really quickly to each other.
Oh, yeah. I like it.
Yes.
Okay. That was really good. That connection that you made.
Thanks.
I feel like you're a farmer shouting at me with information. You know what I mean?
I also imagine that this system was refined over the last 8 years or so of constant attacks from Caesar. If you're ever going to really refine the hey, I got to warn my uncle 3 towns down that Caesar's going to pillage, is over 8 years of being attacked. That would get me really good at shouting.
Yeah.
Anyway, they spread the news of a successful attack on the Romans through the Gallic bloodstream. The beating of this Gallic heart found its way to the one Gaul who could unite them, Vercigentorix, which is a great name.
Yeah.
He was an unstoppable leader who, after being kicked out of his town because he tried to become the king, right? He tried to amass an army. He's like, I'm ready, guys. They kicked him out because Gauls don't like this. And just like Rome doesn't like this, they're like, we don't need this. He's like, you kind of do right now is the problem. He gets kicked out. He just starts preaching in the fields to peasants. And then that snowballs immediately until he's the king of all of Gaul, essentially.
Wow.
Gnarly. You imagine that charismatic, you get kicked out of your town or your town hall, and you're like, I'll just do it in the sewer.
I'm trying to think of a comparison to modern day. Because that doesn't seem extremely original. I mean, it is obviously for the time original, but I feel like there's got to be someone very similar that was kicked out and they became a pariah, and then was just so good at being charismatic, like you said, that they were like, whatever, I'll do what I can.
Wasn't Mussolini kicked out of his original party that he was in?
I don't know, man. Those are your people.
Yeah, I think Mussolini was a socialist or something, and they got kicked out. And then it was like, I kind of like fascism, I guess. And then
yeah, that's much better. Yeah.
I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure this.
No, you might be. I don't know. I mean, perhaps that's the thing, right? I don't know. Well, perhaps that's a lot of leaders get kicked out of they're pariahs in their own right, and then they're like, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know.
It's crazy. But it's not like an American, we don't see that much. People get knocked down that far and then just come screaming undeterred, even though they lose their platform.
Yeah, I would say it's more of it's a thing that you see in sports. Some players get knocked down or they make a mistake with performance enhancing drugs, then they come out back and they're like, I'm clean, and then they have the best year of their life, stuff like that.
I can see sports works well.
Yeah.
Okay. Vercigentorix is described by Caesar, so let's go over his description. He maintained not only the utmost care, but also the strictness of discipline. He also decided, so on that, this dude was harsh, but he is this necessary evil from the Gaul, for the Gaul. And he is if you disobey his orders, he will torture you in the worst way possible and kill you. But he also cares about beating Caesar more than anybody does. Like a reverse does not scare him, right? If Caesar like gets a sally off on him, he's like, I'm not nervous about that because like I'm in this for the long haul. Like let's figure out what to do. And he's also sitting on top of a hill like Caesar is, and like, you know, having reserve troops and sending them out, and he's very formidable. He also comes up with the plan. So he decided to attack the Romans in a different manner. So he gets these councils, right? And it's all these Gallic leaders. They like never meet. This is like unprecedented. And they've never listened to one man before. Like they hate this. They in their bodies. Like this is just so like against everything they believe in. He pointed out that war must be waged in a fashion far different from that which they had previously used. Apparently, Vercigentorix understood what Frederick the Great meant when he had said, "An army like a serpent goes upon its belly." Did you guys hear that when you were enlisted?
No, I was even going to ask who is Frederick the Great?
I don't really know, but I'll tell you what I do know, which is that I was talking about this episode with my father-in-law, who was a pilot, and I was talking about the things I'm about to talk about with his new strategy, and he said this quote, and he didn't know where it came from, and it wasn't.
He said it.
Yeah, he said infantry moves on its belly or something like that. He's like, that's the way I was taught when I was in the Air Force Academy, when he was
interesting.
in college, which I found interesting. So then I looked it up, and it's attributed to a bunch of people, but basically this is things that officers like get taught early on. Like if you want to move infantry, you move their belly. That's what matters here.
What does that mean?
It means that you can only move them as far as you have food to move them, and you can only.
Okay, so you mean moving with as full as their stomach is with food?
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yep. And that's the only thing that matters when you're moving infantry. I mean, the other things matter, but not like this. Like it's just about food. His plan was to burn everything. I literally mean everything. He's just going to scorch earth before scorch earth was a thing. The enemy must necessarily scatter and seek it in the barns. All these scattered parties could be destroyed by the cavalry because Gaul have strong cavalry. He will have done this about, I think I counted like 3 times in the course of this one book. He calls a council and he's like, burn your shit. And they're like, well, we don't want to. He's like, you have to do it if you want to win. And then they will or they won't. It's a whole bunch of stuff like that. They're burning their towns. They're burning all of their farms.
Can you imagine what the image of that looked like, dude?
No,
like
can you imagine, because they're individualists, right? They take pride and they're like the libertarians. Like I think they fit in really well here in America, which is a good. Like I like them. But can you imagine a Vacaville town hall and then being like, by the way, you all got to burn your houses down to the ground just for the sake of America at large? No way. I don't
know. Yeah, we don't have that sense of community. Like it's just not the same. Yeah.
We don't have anybody charismatic enough to make it happen right now. Right now, I don't see anybody doing it right away.
Let's start it, Kevin. Let's be those charismatic people and let's just be like, burn this motherfucker down. Woo! Okay, that's crazy. I'm just imagining fucking black skies of smoke, dude. Just like some straight up apocalypse now shit before apocalypse was even a word. You know what I mean? Before people could conceptualize the end of days. Like this sounds like the end of days.
Absolutely. And this is where, I mean, it's a good strategy. Because remember, they aren't the invading force. Caesar is the invading force. It doesn't feel like that when you're reading this because you're reading it from Caesar's point of view. And Caesar's who we know, like everybody knows who Caesar is, but he's the invader. He's not supposed to be there. He doesn't know how the land works. This also harkens back to Dan Carlin's essential question in his episode on the Gaul, which is, what would you be willing to sacrifice for your culture? And that's a big question, right? Like kind of think about it a lot. I don't know.
Yeah, we're so privileged, dude. That's not a thing that we think about, period.
No,
like,
I don't worry about that.
Even the very small concept of just sacrifice,
right?
Like that, let alone is hard for people to be like, oh man, what do I have to sacrifice for the greater good or for like my fucking relationships in life, whether it be marriage, friendship, or my relationship with myself. Like, what do I need to sacrifice? You know what I mean? That's interesting. To take it on a macro scale like that is wild.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't have the answer. And I'm about to yada 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 a lot of shit. So I'm gonna yada 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 a lot of these smaller conflicts.
Send it.
Vercigentorix started to give Caesar a run for his money. That's what matters here. This strategy works essentially. Like it does. It's a good strategy. It's
burning shit down.
Yeah, they're all infantry, and we've talked about supply lines every book since we started this, and no Gaul has thought of doing this and gotten everybody to do it. So it was very clever, and it did work. Caesar had to suddenly really monitor his supply lines, and he also started having to monitor who's behind him, because he can't. Before, he would like worry about, Cisalpine Gaul or the Aedui or the Helvetii, like, right? He's just kind of like thinking about them, but he's not worried too much because he can mooch off of other Gauls that he's kind of already pacified. But all of a sudden, everybody's pissed at him, right? The shouting's getting across. They know he's vulnerable, and he's like making concessions that he doesn't want to make, where he's like, I don't know if these people didn't show up because they actually couldn't, or because they just are saying fuck you to me, and I can't do anything about it because I can't risk them outright aligning with Vercigentorix anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great. I'm like, yeah, you have to make tough choices here, man. Which then makes me I don't like Caesar, but I do respect him as a military leader, because all of a sudden the numbers are high. I don't think he's lying in a lot of this story. There's too many people involved. And like now that Pompey is directly involved again, like it's just too much. It's too much to be able to get away, because he has to bring these back to Rome to be read. There's no way he's getting away with all like lies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. That's a good point. People are going to read it. That's a good point. Yeah.
In the earlier ones, he can lie all he wants. He's like, yeah, it was a close run thing. And like, who the fuck knows? Like, you're fighting people that they've never even heard of before. But all of a sudden, he's like, I got every Roman soldier and officer here. Like, they're all here.
This is where Herodotus becomes like when he started writing down history, other people like veterans of the Battle of Thermopylae are like, I was there, I didn't see that shit. You know what I mean? As they're reading it. So that's the tough one, right? When people write forms of history, whether it be memoirs, autobiographies, or just straight up like a journalistic approach to something that happened, there's going to be one person that was like, yeah, I was there, and that's not how that went down. So I imagine you are making a good point, though, where Caesar wrote this during a time where there was probably, countless amounts of people who would have been reading it that were there,
right,
with him.
Yeah, at this point, there's a huge, right? This isn't just this isn't just his 10th Legion. This is everybody.
Yeah.
It's also, we're seeing that Caesar understood that Vercigentorix was in a different class, because he would do things that he would never normally. Like, he's marching through like 6 feet of snow to get a surprise attack off, like risking his troops. His troops go hungry. There's crazy things. He's like pillaging villages, and he's just openly writing about that now. Like, we just pillaged and killed everybody, like, and we killed them to the man, woman, and child. Oh shit. You wrote that down. Like,
war, dude. War be like that.
That is, and so the conflicts, they appear like stalemates, kind of favoring the Gaul. Maybe you could say that, like, Caesar's winning them, but they're not sure things like the earlier ones, until Caesar sends in German cavalry. It's his trump card throughout this whole book, and it pushes most of the conflicts towards Caesar. So you'll say, like, we're tied up. We're in unfavorable ground. My troops aren't listening to me. Something happens, blah, blah, blah. And the Gaul cavalry is being used really effectively. They like to do things. They like mix their archers with their cavalry. It's like really cool and really clever. But then the German cavalry are just brutal, I guess. I don't get why they're so strong compared to the Gauls, but maybe it's the number, because the numbers are all made up. So we don't really know what that looks like. So what was Gaul's answer? Again, they hold a council. This is like the second or third time they say this, but they're just going to burn all their towns down now, right? So not just their fields,
Jeez.
they're burn all their towns down so that there's nothing the Romans can't camp. They can't make those into encampments. They have to build it each time. They decided not to burn down one town, Avaricum, for not clear reasons. It's called the best city in all of Gaul, and everybody knows this.
What's the town called?
Avaricum.
Is it still around today?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Avaricum?
Avaricum.
Let's find out. Ooh, Avaricum, Gaul. It is now the city of Bourges. It's in France. Today, what is today? France.
So there's no way it stood because France has gone through so many battles by the Middle Ages.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not there anymore. But they have really fucking cool like miniatures of what the city used to look like, and it's fucking awesome looking.
Cool. Caesar then marched for it. It's the only town, right? In like all of the visible field for Caesar. He's like,
that's not being burnt.
Yeah, that's not just gone. But he was hard pressed for grain at this point. The story goes,
grain, dude.
We're gonna take this with a grain of salt. This story, because I don't know how much I believe it. I mean, I believe it happened, but I just don't know if I believe his soldiers. I don't. After talking with enough enlisted guys now, I'm like, I don't fucking think he said that. Or if he said it way more sarcastically than that. But the story goes that he told his men they can all go home. No harm, no foul. We'll all just go home. But they all refused because they wanted to avenge the Romans that were killed a couple books ago. So they were willing to just be hungry and not eat for multiple days. And I could see Caesar selling it in a number of ways. It was something like, I don't really believe that. I don't believe that he just was like talking to us like, let's just go home, guys. Like, you guys are great. I fucking love you. You love me. Let's do it. And they're like, we're on your honor. We can't do it. No. But
so that's funny, dude. So he's writing it as like, they loved me. So I did everything right and they indicted me. Like,
it's a total
like,
Trump move. Like, they fucking love me. I'm like, no, bullshit. All
right.
But the subtext that I was reading was, maybe he really said something like, the Gauls think that we are weak. What is to stop them from seeking revenge upon our homes, our wives, and our children? That's
better. That's better.
We just burnt down. That would play much harder for me. Like,
that one makes much more sense.
If anyone floated that idea to me, I'd be like, oh, I'm just going to be hungry for another day. Then let's stay here.
Yep.
I'm locked in this now.
Yeah.
The siege of Avaricum was intense, and it lasted about a month. The men tried to escape one night. This is great. But the women get pissed off at them about being left for the Romans because they just saw what happened at the last cities. And best case, they all just become fucking slaves. And worst case, they get killed to the man. So they're like, it's not going to be great no matter what. So they started screaming to let the Romans know they were trying to leave. And then the guys had to stop. They're like, fine, we won't go. We won't go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Dang.
When the Romans did break the walls finally, Caesar wrote, enraged by the massacre at Cenabum, and the toll occasioned by the siege, the soldiers spared neither the aged, nor the women, nor the children.
So wait, the walls, is this the walls at the city that you were talking about, the Avaricum city?
Yeah, Avaricum. So Avaricum's gone now. And everybody is is killed by Romans. The kids.
Okay, so listeners, if you get the chance, maybe when we edit this or whatever, but there's really cool pictures online of the Avaricum walls.
Oh, cool.
Like of what they would possibly look like in France. So, or Gaul, excuse me.
Yeah, the stones on the outside.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. Have you seen it? Have you looked at it?
No, but I read all about how.
Okay.
Yeah, it's cool. So basically,
it is really cool.
The walls of Gaul are really cleverly designed because they're stones, so that they can't be like lit on fire. But then they're like packed with like dirt and like sticks inside, so that you can't like batter them down. And so they're very, very strong. And so that's why a siege like this would take a month, because
dang,
the Gauls are also really clever. They know how to mine, right? They know how to mine for iron, so they know how to dig tunnels really well. And they'll dig tunnels and go like set their shit on fire, and like it's so cool. I mean, it sucks in the end because they lose and every single person died. Like that seemed a little extreme, but
You can do all of this on like Civ 6. Like the Gauls have like good mining capabilities and things like that.
yeah, the Gauls, they have good mining. That's how they get most of their like culture is through their mining, which is cool, right? Because normally your culture comes from reading, but Gauls didn't really read because they didn't write a lot of their shit down. So Civ 6 is great.
I know.
I got so pissed off last night. I'm playing as Portugal right now, and I'm just conquering the seven seas, trying to get that diplomatic victory. And fucking Spain took over my city state, but I can't just outright kill them because I need everyone to be friendly with me so I can get those diplomatic points. So I can.
Classic Spain, bro.
I was so mad at him.
Classic Spain.
Anyway, the big break for Caesar was that there was grain that he was able to recover in Avaricum. That was a big deal. There was tons of grain in that
Fucking
city.
grain, dude.
Vercingetorix, like he calls it. He's like, you have to burn down Avaricum. It's too good of a city and there's too much shit in it. It's huge. It's like our biggest city. It's our best city. Everybody knows it's our best city, and they just couldn't do it. So he's now able to kind of renew his campaign and chase Vercingetorix.
I think I asked this in a different episode, but I'm pretty curious to find out the archaeological evidence of all of these wars.
Yeah, and I don't know.
I looked up a little bit. There 100% is, but it's just crazy because like all this like destruction. That's the one cool thing about destruction is like that shit. You're leaving behind a footprint when you do that. So just interesting.
It is interesting. Okay. Again, I'm gonna yada 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 a lot of the. There's lots of interesting smaller military and political conflicts that happen, but we're going to skip past them because we already know how they work, right? We've already seen a lot of them, and we're so close to the best part. At one point, both armies were marching alongside each other on opposite sides of the river. This part was pretty dope. I kind of wish that I had like talked about this in the last episode and just done it early because it is pretty dope, but it takes a while to get through. It feels very cinematic, right? Like both armies, the Vercingetorix and Caesar, are on opposite sides of this river, the Lori River, and they're just marching along, breaking down the bridges, trying to build up the bridges. They're like hiding their numbers while they send another group to go back and try to build a secret bridge across to go try to flank the other one. It's pretty dope.
That is cool.
And it's just like, it feels really dramatic. Yeah. But the town of Georgovia is suffered a similar fate as Avaricum. I'm going to just touch on this one really quickly. I want to pause on this town because I want to give the women's perspective again, since it's like super lacking in this narrative. Caesar obviously has a view of women, or doesn't, because he isn't referencing them ever. So we'll talk about them real quick. When the Romans began to take the town, matrons threw clothing and silver down from the wall and, leaning forward with bared breasts, implored the outstretched hands to spare them and not to kill the women and children as they had done in Avaricum. So one, the women know what's up. Like they know what's happening. And
men have not changed, dude. We're never going to change.
And like I laughed the first time I read it, and I had to read a couple more times before I built the outline. And I got like really sad. Like, they are desperate. They're like, just don't kill me. Like, you ass. Like, just let me go. Like, it's not great. But this one works out kind of in their favor. It's kind of a ruse. We don't know if this part's a ruse or not, but we know that they did this, according to Caesar. And the Romans get very excited about raping and pillaging. This is Caesar's words. Like, his enlisted dudes are like, this is why I'm here. And they end up losing 700 dudes that day because they got too excited. They supposedly didn't listen to Caesar shouting out some really good commands that they just didn't hear or something. I don't know. I don't think that fucking happened.
They thought that they were going to go be perverts. And then in the
town, they had some guys that were just like ready to go, and they just fucking
dope.
Yeah.
Dope. That's good, because when the moment you were like, oh, they got really excited for raping and pillaging, I was like,
yeah, it doesn't feel good. Doesn't feel good.
Not that my ears are not happy when like I hear that, and then you're like, oh, but they fucked it up, so that's good.
Yep. Caesar had to have a locker room talk with all the boys and said it was their fault for not listening to him, closely enough because it was unfavorable ground. So not
You bet.
not because of
You
systemic
bet.
issues, not because of the being normally allowed to rape and pillage, but just don't do it too excitedly. Like that's kind of like the locker room talk he was giving. Like, do it in all due time. Like we all will get ours.
You guys got overzealous with the rape.
Yeah. Just get
Jesus.
zealous with it. Don't get overzealous with it. Fucking stupid. All right. Yeah. But it is man. Just that image. Those women are just like, this is gnarly. And then the other women screaming so the men couldn't leave. That was the right call because
Yeah.
it didn't go well. So that was their only chance.
Yeah, fucking shitty, dude.
But we're gonna go into fun may not be the right word, but it's pretty fun. It shouldn't be as much fun as it is because it's harrowing, but it's pretty fun thousands of years later.
All right, let's get it.
It is time. I'm not sure what to call this. I was thinking of calling it Siegegate or Siegeception or $18,000 in a chance at the title.
I'm just imagining. Have you seen all the Matrix movies?
Oh yeah.
Okay. In the third Matrix, the final Matrix, because the fourth Matrix doesn't exist. But that scene where it's raining and Mr. Smith and Neo are about to fight, and Neo says, "It ends tonight."
That is a good score right there.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm imagining right now. Just rain and just it ends tonight.
The Vercigentorix found himself in the town of Elysia with Caesar hot on the trail. The town of Elysia was situated on top of a very high hill, so that it was evident that it could be reduced only by blockade. The foot of this hill on two separate sides was washed by two rivers. Before the town, a plain extended for about 3 miles. On all other sides, the town was surrounded by hills at a moderate distance from the height of Elysia, and having a like elevation. Below the wall, that side of the hill which faced east was entirely occupied by the forces of the Gauls, who had fortified their positions with a ditch and a wall of loose stones 6 feet high. The circumference of the line of encirclement, which the Romans were starting to build, extended for 11 miles.
Jesus.
Camps had been constructed in convenient positions, and 23 redoubts had been constructed there. In these redoubts, outposts were posted in the daytime to prevent a surprise attack. At night, they were guarded by strong garrison of men in the bivouac. Okay, let's take a second here. I'm so excited to go over this. I wanna not spoil it. Okay, let's look at a couple pictures. Let's pause.
Yay, pictures.
All right, let's look at this one first. So this is a little, because we're going to get into a lot of construction building here. So this is a picture I found from the West Point military handbook on how they built the bridges, which I thought was interesting. So earlier we talked about the bridge building, right? They would just like build bridges across the Rhine just to show that they can and then like take it down. This is how they did it. So they just like literally built a bridge. It wasn't the stringing together of boats. And they had to use the direction of the current and like do all this crazy shit. Pretty gnarly.
Oh.
It's like a legit bridge.
Yeah. Yes. That is 100% a bridge.
It's not what you imagine, right? You imagine like the rinky-dink thing that like the army has to build to get the troops over, but not this. Okay.
I'm trying to read some of this stuff you got here.
Oh yeah.
That's fucking cool.
Okay, I'm not letting you read the rest of it. You're gonna spoil it. You're gonna spoil it. All right. I'm gonna go to this one. This won't show you everything. So this is the map. If you type in like map of Caesar's campaign of Gaul, this is what you'll see most of the time. This is, I think, where the picture comes from, or at least they used the picture.
I've seen this.
Yep. And so Elysia is right here, right? So right in the middle of the heart of Gaul. Like it couldn't be any more cinematic than this. And this is Elysia. So Elysia is, I like this little topography map down here in the bottom right. We see Elysia is kind of at the top of this hill, this plateau. And then we see this huge 11-mile barrier around.
That's it? That's the 11-mile shit that you were talking about?
Yeah.
Whoa.
before we go to the next part, before I show you the next picture, I'm going to talk about some crazy things that Caesar's going to build.
Okay.
So this battle right here, this blockade, he realizes he can't storm it. The numbers, they go back and forth. Like I was reading a lot of different accounts of numbers, but I'm just going to use this one image. It's basically this one saying 80,000 Vercigentorix included are in Alesia. The Romans are 70,000. Now, I don't know how accurate those two numbers are, but I do know that the Romans probably had less than Vercigentorix here because they can't take him. Like Caesar says that, like, I don't have enough guys to take the town, so I have to do a blockade. All right, that's what we'll start with.
Okay.
Again, Caesar was only able to construct these things because the German cavalry keep clearing the field every time the Gauls start punishing them. Because Vercigentorix has soldiers right now. He has more than 80,000, I think, at this point. But he has his cavalry. And he's trying to fight them. He's like, they're trying to stop them from building this blockade. They know what's going on. And it'll be close. And then the fucking Germans come through and it kind of like wipes them, or it's like a push, and then they have to go back to their town. So the night before the Romans finish their encampment, Vercigentorix sends away all of the cavalry and tells them, come back in 30 days, please.
30?
30. He says, I have enough rations to last 30 days. I can probably stretch it a couple more.
Okay.
So there's a few things that you may be asking, like, why did he do this? Like, the cavalry is the Gauls' strength. Like, the Gauls
Doesn't that seem like 30 days seems like a long time, no?
Yeah, but what he's saying is on oath of honor, not on hostages, because I don't have time to get hostages. I need you to go back to your town, and I need you to raise an army, and I need you all just to promise to come back and free us, because we ain't getting out of here anymore.
So like barricading themselves in or what?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Jesus. Okay.
It's sketchy, right?
Yes.
What if they don't come back, right? Like
but I don't understand like why would he risk making them leave in the first place?
Because so I think the thing is about food. So cavalry are useless during a siege, and he only has enough food to feed the infantry for 30 days. And he knows his only chance, Vercigentorix is smart as shit. The only thing that he knows that might help is if literally all of Gaul's free men soldiers come marching back. And it's a gamble.
It is a huge gamble. Okay.
Yep. Pretty wild.
30 days. And then why is he quantifying it in 30 days? Like why 30 days? Because just the food rations, he says?
Yeah, he says, I have enough rations for 30 days. I can stretch it a couple more if I have to.
Okay.
So Caesar wakes up stoked. This is his best day, I think, in a long time. He just wakes up on the right side of the camp. He just wakes up and he's like, whoo, I got some ideas, guys. And he starts to construct what are called siege works. These siege works this is why people study this battle. It's one of the most famous things. If you go in to become an officer, like, you will have to study this battle and what happens here, which is cool, that we're going to cover it right now. It started by building 2 trenches. I think he ends up building 3 eventually, which is crazy. One of the trenches that he builds, he ends up diverting a river to flow through the trench to make a new river that the Gauls would have to cross if they wanted to fight them.
Whoa.
And
dude, that's what when you think of like my arm, like when in Persia, when they were like, my armies will like move like mountains and rivers and shit, like they literally moved rivers.
And they aren't
wild.
Shallow. I think they're 12 to 15 feet deep, each of them, and like 12 feet wide or something like that. They're huge. They're absolutely massive.
Okay.
So if you get past all the trenches, then you get to the rampart palisade thing, right? So that's the slope that Romans like to build. Those are 12 feet high. So you have to get out of the trench, and then you have to climb up a gradual hill 12 feet just to get to the soldier. But wait, there's more. He built towers on these and he put huge spikes to slow down anyone who tried to climb up them. And it's going to get worse from there. Caesar also we'll go over 3 of his traps. These are like man traps. And we're going to start we're going to start with boundary posts. So we're starting where the Romans are. And then I'll show you some pictures in a second. So the first trap is called a boundary post. These were trenches that were filled with 5 rows of sharpened tree trunks ready to stab anyone that touched them. Okay, so he's just burying spikes. It's in a movie. When you fall into a pit of spikes and they get stabbed.
It's like Indiana Jones shit.
Yeah, they fucking did that. Like that was a real thing, and it really worked. Like they were so proud of these. They're like they said they were gonna have a hard time not falling into the spikes, and they're very excited about that. So those are boundary posts. Right in front of these were logs formed in a quincux pattern. That word, I don't know if I'm saying it right. That's on a die, the number 5. Right, so you have the dot in the middle, and then the 4 dots on the sides.
Oh, okay.
So that's what that means. Sharpened at their tops and poked out no more than 3 inches above the ground. So you have the Romans on top of the hill, then you have the death pits, and then you have these huge logs that are sharpened into spikes, and like these rows they're in these 5-point star things, and they only stick out no more than 3 inches out of the ground, and they're just buried deep in there. So you walk, and when you hit
you're
one,
gonna sink. Oh my god, dude! Holy shit!
Caesar reported that 8 rows of this kind were made 3 feet apart, and the soldiers named them lilies because they resembled the flower.
Beautiful. Jesus, this feels like I don't know, like at the end of Sandlot when they make that huge like contraption to get this. Like, I'm just like listening to like I'm here like imagining that like they're like whistling and like making all these
they're loving it.
Yeah, wild, but like this shit is brutal.
And then in front
this is gonna win in the war essentially, right?
So they're trying to equalize the numbers. Yeah, they're just trying to. Them being construction workers and them having Germans is literally them winning this fucking battle.
Okay, and you said this is like something that's taught in like at West Point and shit. What is the name of this battle?
So it's like the Battle of Alesia or the Siege of Alesia.
Okay.
In front of the lilies are these things called the goads. It was a field of logs, and each log, like they're laid down, has a bunch of iron hooks on top of them. And they're sunken all over the field. So you run and then you just get a hook through your shin.
Oh my god, dude.
Because you have to run, because the thing that you may not be realizing is that the whole time you're doing this, the Romans are hurling javelins at you from 30 feet above you.
Are there arrows as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Then fuck, dude. Yeah, this sounds ancient warfare sounds horrible.
Yeah. And it's crazy too, because Caesar doesn't talk about this kind of stuff a lot. And all of a sudden he's going into detail because he's just so proud of it.
Proud. Yeah, that makes sense.
I'll summarize it real quick so that we can remember everything that just happened. A Gallic soldier would have to run at the Romans, hurling javelins while feeling for the hooks, because you're not trying to get hit, and then trying not to slice your body open on the lilies, because the long sides of the lilies are made into points too, so it's a long blade to like cut you as you fall on it. And then finally avoid the spiked death pits before having to cross a trench, a river, climb a 12-foot rampart. And then your prize for making it to the top, a professional Roman army commanded by Julius Caesar himself. Now that doesn't sound very fun, does it?
It sounds like those shows, those popular shows like Wipeout, where you have to like run across like the water bouncy balls things, and then at the end you're just like, yay, I won. That's what it feels like. Like you're just, you're having one guy be like, all right, bro, your turn. And you see this, but he's like, oh, the pit got him. The one of 7 pits got him. All right, my turn. Oh, he's dead. Try another one. Yep. Like, good God, dude. I do imagine over time, if enough dead bodies started to stack up, you could just run over the dead bodies to get there.
Yep. And we didn't cover counter siege tactics yet, and I can basically just summarize it. So the common way that you beat these and beat all siege tactics like this is that you get like bundles of sticks and hay, and you run and you chuck it into the trench, and then you run back, and then
Got it.
everybody does it. The problem that they're going to run into is it takes a ton of time because these ones are so like sophisticated compared to normal.
They're rivers. They have rivers.
Yeah, that one you got. I don't know how they got through that because they're weapons and stuff. They have to carry that across. So here's a picture. Here's one picture, an artist's creation of it, and
it's pretty cool.
You'll see that what we also get into, which we'll talk about in a second. I won't talk about that yet. But up at the top, you see that they call the man traps here.
Yeah, yeah.
Traps, and then they have the river. They have to cross the trench, and then the towers are just waiting for them.
Oh my god, dude! Oh no, this is horrible. That's horrible. That's pretty cool. It's impressive.
It's so
very impressive.
Yeah, you see why it's studied. It's like this is if you want to win a war, this is what you have to do. Like
it's interesting because you were saying you were giving us hints in the beginning. You were like they are part construction workers, part warriors, and that's the kicker. That's the kicker.
Okay, I think a point that many people don't talk about when studying this battle is why Caesar went so crazy on these siege works. He had to because Vercingetorix's plan of starving the Romans worked really well. Caesar was sending troops out all over the place to forage for food, so he didn't have the numbers to siege Lycia, not traditionally. So this is the thing that I don't feel like is truly covered. Maybe it is, like if you're in an actual like military class with a professor that studies this for a living and stuff. But even though Caesar doesn't have as many troops as the Gauls, he still should be able to like siege them, right? Once he builds this. But he has to send his troops out into barns and like all over, and it takes them forever to get any food, just like Vercingetorix wanted. So Vercingetorix's plan did work. Right? It's like it's heartbreaking that they lose because his plan worked. Like it was the right plan. But here's where the story gets absolutely fucking wild. Caesar knew that he was deep in Gallic territory, and he also knew that those cavalry could come back. So to meet an attack from the outside, Caesar built corresponding fortifications of the same kind facing the opposite direction, following a course over the most level ground that the nature of the country afforded. Starting from the inside, we have the town of Alesia, a Roman siege encampment, all of the Romans, another Roman siege encampment, and then potentially the rest of Gaul ready to descend upon them. What? So this is
ridiculous.
This is why I'm calling it Siegeception or siege gate. So here's another picture from the West Point military. So as you can see, there's two barriers because they are sieging Alesia and they are preparing to get a siege on them from all of Gaul.
So it's siege on top of siege on top of siege on top of siege.
It's sieges all the way down.
Siegeception is the name of the episode.
Yes. Crazy.
Wild.
And it means they're going to have to fight on two sides at one time, which is...
Do you think when they get to the last siege, there's just a top spinning?
Like, is it going to fall?
Is it going to fall? And everyone says, it's not that complicated, okay? Don't overthink it.
Easy for you to say. All right, we're going to get some interesting politics here. Gauls outside Alesia do raise an army, but they have to thread a needle between being too small to do anything and being too big to feed. This is, I think...
Oh, no.
This is where Gaul is not barbarians. Like, they are not. It is such like a... You're doing a discredit by saying that because they're having councils where they're like, what's our like perfect ratio of food to soldier versus how many soldiers we need? Like they are absolutely doing like very complicated economic, I don't know, equations that I can't do. Like I don't even know how much I eat in a day.
Yeah.
I'm not planning for thousands of people. And the number that they ended up with was 250,000 soldiers.
Holy shit. Yeah, that's a lot.
It's a lot. And I don't know how
too many.
But it's a lot.
Yeah, I don't know how you feed that many.
No. Well, they wanted more, but they couldn't feed more.
No shit.
In Alesia, there is a meeting where they talk about eating each other. to last.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know. They also try to send out those unfit to fight to become Roman slaves. So like anybody that can't fight, like women, children, older people, sick people. And then the Romans fucking refuse them and they leave them at the gates. And so like the Gauls aren't wanting them back in because they don't want to feed them. They want to win this war for all of Gaul.
Wow.
It's brutal.
Wow, that's horrible, dude.
It's bad. Everybody looks
Holy
bad right now.
shit.
Because Caesar's like, they're gonna have to let them back in or like watch their family members starve to death. And it's
Dang. Brutal.
yeah.
Brutal.
The Gallic army marches, they march hard, they make it to the field. There's a battle between the Roman cavalry and a combined force of Gallic cavalry and archers. They like combine the two together a lot. It's really cool. And then Caesar talks about the battle. He reported, as the engagement was taking place in full view of everyone, and no deed, brave or cowardly, could pass unnoticed, both sides were spurred on by desire for glory and the fear of disgrace. Basically saying everyone's on a hill, like there's two hills, and then there's a field. Everyone can see every battle that's happening at the same time.
Yeah. That's crazy.
That's hundreds of thousands of people that are also soldiers are like screaming, I imagine, while you're fighting. And I cannot imagine what the scene looks like. The Gauls were winning by the end of multiple hours of straight fighting. They're fighting for like 6 hours, I think. The Germans massed their squadrons at one point of the field, attacked the enemy, and routed them. When the enemy's cavalry had been put to flight, the archers were surrounded and killed. So the story goes, and I was reading other sources, that people think of the Germans right here as like just fanatics when they are on their cavalry. Like, because it talks about like them being like focused. Like they just like literally went in on as a wedge and just like wedged through the Gallic cavalry. But Gallic soldiers lost like most of their archers right now, which it was brutal for them. So first battle not going well because of the Germans. A day later, there was an attack at midnight from the Gauls on the outside of the Roman siege. Vercigentorix, hearing the start of the fight, then sent his men out of town to attack from the inside, so they would attack from both sides at the same time and try to fill in these traps. As long as the Gauls were some distance from our defenses, they gained some advantage from the large quantity of their javelins. There's hundreds of thousands of javelins being thrown right now. But when they came nearer, they were pierced unaware by the goads or stumbled into the pits and were impaled. Others were transfixed by the wall pikes discharged from the ramparts and the towers. Many of them were wounded, but failed to penetrate any of our defenses. At daylight, the attack stopped.
Jesus, dude.
These are
rough
fights.
Just imagining all the javelins flying through the air, like scary. Totally scary, dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
By a low estimate, there are going to be tens of thousands of javelins thrown in that first hour, right? Like everybody that has a javelin is going to throw it from both sides. So that's thousands and thousands of javelins being thrown up and down. The Gaul, not being barbarous at all, they formed a council. This is the Gauls on the outside, so not Vercigentorix.
Okay.
But I think they did a really good job here. They did the best they could. They formed a council, they sent out scouts, and they looked for a way to win the fight, right? They didn't get held up on this reverse that usually holds them up. Usually, right, they lose some type of conflict like this, they're done in all these stories. They figured out that the north of Alesia wasn't as protected by the siege crafts. There's something wrong with the north of Alesia, that it's like it's on a hill or something. So they formed essentially a special forces unit. And they're like, they picked the bravest Gauls they knew, and they're like 6,000 of them. And they're like, you're our dudes. Like, you got to do this. And a lot of them are related to like Vercingetorix or to the people inside, so that they are even more motivated to win. Since the Roman army was strung out over so extensive lines, they could not easily meet the enemy at several points simultaneously. The shouts, which were raised at the roar of the combatants, had a great tendency to scare our men because they saw their own safety from the danger dependent on the courage of others. For generally, what is invisible affects men's minds the most.
Oh, that's cool.
That is cool. That's a
That's
good
a cool
line.
way to put that. Yeah.
And what's basically happening here is there are 3 attacks happening against the Romans at the exact same time. There is all of the Gallic army around the outsides attacking, plus the special forces are trying to get through, and somehow Vercigentorix has his men attack from the inside at the exact same time. And we talked about this when we went over the book, the Druids, Women, and Celts book, but the Gauls scream, like they roar. They play mind games, like they fight naked, like
Right.
they do whatever they can to get in your head, and they're tall, and so they like that. And these are a lot of long hair Gauls, and long hair Gauls are the gnarliest Gauls, right? They're the ones that are blue tattooed, and they're ready.
Blue, yeah.
They're ready to fight. The fight's brutal for everybody. Like no one's coming out of this looking good, and the Romans were pressed. Like they're really struggling to hold out. You think about them like a boat. They have multiple leaks at the exact same time.
Okay.
And so the Gauls are getting through in multiple spots. Caesar is sending out, he's in one of these towers on top of the hill, and he's just calm, cool, and collected, and just like, sending out his reserve forces. That's usually how this professional army wins, right? Is they use the reserve forces really well. He sends Brutus out to like fight certain groups. He sends everybody out until he's out of reinforcements. The Gauls are still pressing them. So Caesar puts on his flowing red cape and rode out to fight himself with what I think are the Germans.
Okay.
And because of that, he's able to push back the big hole from the north of Alesia, and he's able to curb this fight. And
so he actually went out and did some fighting himself?
This is the second time I think he's really had to do it.
Damn.
But in the way he describes it is once he puts on his red flowing cape, all the men are.
I get it. Yeah.
Their morale just shoots through the roof.
Of course.
To see him. Also, I think that if he's riding with all those Germans that just can't seem to lose, that doesn't hurt the morale either. Like, hey, it's the guys who never lose. Like that's good for us.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So they're able to fend them off for a while, but is that it, or
that's it? So it's 3 that siege, the Battle of Alesia, the Siege of Alesia is 3 battles, right? That first one, the cavalry battle, and then the second failed attempt, and then this one, and this last. So
the Gaul couldn't pull it off.
No, and again, I think we just need to look at them as not barbarians here, because let's look at what Vercigentorix does. Vercigentorix marched back into Alesia and presented himself as a leader of honor. This is what Caesar reported. On the following day, Vercigentorix summoned a council and pointed out that he had undertaken that war not for private ends, but for the sake of national liberty. And since he must yield to fortune, he offered himself to them for either alternative, to placate the Romans by his death or to surrender him alive. Deputies were sent to Caesar to discuss this matter. He ordered the arms to be surrendered and their leading men to be brought to him. So basically, he goes in, he holds council. He's like, listen, I'm the leader. I'm the one they want. The only chance we have of everybody in Gaul not dying right now is if I like literally go bow before Caesar. So I'm going to go do that. Which he didn't run away. Like that's a pretty dude. He did it.
He admitted defeat.
Yep. And Caesar literally gets a seat. Like he brings out like a big throne, and then they make Vercigentorix like stand in front of him and like kneel before him and like throw down all of his weapons. Yeah, it is pretty brutal.
And so what happened? So do we have like an after action report? Like what comes of Caesar after this? He goes home and writes a book?
Yeah, well, let's talk first about, there's still a couple things that happen immediately.
Okay.
So they put him into, they like capture him alive and they bring him back and then they parade him through Rome and they'll eventually kill him.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, I don't remember how long he lives for, but not that long. One question though is like, why did Caesar and the soldiers even do this? Like, why did they go to Gaul? And maybe the prize will tell us the answer. Caesar says this at the end of his book. Distributed the rest as booty among the entire army, 1 Gaul to every man. So every soldier who fought in this war gets a Gaul slave.
Yay.
Yeah, right.
That's okay.
Uh,
Was that worth the price of admission? Like, is that really what we're walking away with this from? Like, hey, we beat the Gauls. Now we got slaves.
I think that this shows because all right, so remember from Thermopylae, the Lethe effect, which is you things that are common knowledge, we don't always write down, and then we forget. And so
Yeah.
you look for clues for like, oh, this means something else. And so this doesn't mean that this was the whole prize. This means that this is what they've been doing the whole time. They've just been passing, they've been collecting gold, they've been collecting anything they could use, and they've been collecting people, and then they've been distributing it as booty for all these soldiers as they go through it.
And they also have land, right? Like, so that's land gained, no? Like,
Almost,
Alesia is theirs.
yeah.
All of Gaul is theirs.
And there's a lot of
Gaul
grain.
is now Rome,
Yep.
right?
Yep. And there's a lot of grain, right? There's a lot of good farmland. That's why the Germans keep crossing the Rhine because it's really good. There's a lot of good stuff that you can do with it. The final thing that he says, when the dispatches of the campaign were published at Rome, a Thanksgiving of 20 days was proclaimed. So there was a 20-day party.
Yay.
Thousands upon thousands of people died over this 8-year war. Ooh, a little anticlimactic.
Dang. Pretty wild to think about how an entire part of the map was just decimated, and then a people were enslaved.
Yep.
Like, it's just interesting because we obviously Julius Caesar is I don't know, pretty well known. People know him. Like, even kids know about him. I
Absolutely.
would imagine elementary students, they're like, yeah, Julius Caesar, I've heard of Julius Caesar. But do they know him in this way?
Right.
You know?
And
Hmm.
Vercigentorix was beheaded and murdered. I mean, executed, I guess. Yeah, a couple years later. So they did keep him alive because I think they did parade him around. Like that was like a thing.
Oh no, like a trophy?
Yeah, and he
Oh
knew that.
God.
Like I think Dan Carlin says like he would have known that, and that's why like him saying that he would do it is like that much more powerful. He's like, I'm gonna take years of this just to try to give you guys a chance.
Damn.
Because he could have gone in, he could have tried to go into exile or kill himself, which is like most of them do one of those two things. Never do they surrender like this.
So like Ambiorix, he fucking dipped, but arguably Vercingetorix doing this shows a level of bravery, is what you're saying, and like
Right.
being admirable.
Yeah, I think he, took being a king really seriously. Like
Yeah.
he understood what it meant to be a leader. Um, I just can't believe I'm trying to think through. This is like the fucking what's the pharaoh's name in? I'm not the pharaoh, but what's the king of Persia? And during Thermopylae,
Xerxes.
Xerxes. Xerxes brings a big throne, right? And so like someone had to fucking carry Caesar's throne out here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We talked about it in the Battle of Thermopylae, how people would like carry his throne so that he could like look down at the battle on his throne. Like, it was a whole thing, specifically having slaves carry a throne. So kind of a douche move.
Yeah, and Caesar this whole time is still probably saying to people like, "No, no, I don't want to be emperor. No, no, I'm not. My aims aren't that high."
My ass.
He's like sitting on a throne that they brought thousands of miles up Gaul. Yeah.
Dude, pretty fucking crazy climactic battle. The Battle of Alesia.
Yep.
For those of you listeners who, if you're still here listening, look up Alesia. The internet there is 100% archaeological evidence of the Battle of Alesia. And what a beautiful little plot of land. Oh my gosh. Super pretty. And just trying to imagine all of it today is wild. I would like to go to France now just to see this.
Oh yeah, if I go there, I'm for sure. If I go to France, I'm for sure going there.
That's what I would like to go for. I mean, yeah, that's wild. 52 BC. and there's still archaeological evidence. Pretty crazy. Well, dude, good job, dude. You should be proud of yourself, dude. That took us months to do
A lot of work.
Gaul. Yeah.
And if we're not totally done with Caesar, because we could come back for him having a civil war, like him turning Roman. There's a couple battles that I was reading about. Like,
Caesar will be back. We'll be back. Yeah.
Then also there's a really big battle after his death when they try to figure out who's going to lead Rome after, and that's pretty
dope.
Cool.
Yeah, dope. Yeah, it turns out, dude, history is filled with battles
and buddies.
And yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got nothing but content and time.
We did
it. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the fucking battle. That was the battle for Gaul.
That was the battle for Gaul.
And Julius Caesar took it.
Dude.
Just showing his big you know what.
Yep.
Wow. I'm gonna miss this.
Me too.
But
we got some cool battles coming up.
We do. Have you already started? Have you already grabbed some of the literature for your next battle?
Yeah, I've been reading it during the vacation. My wife is already desperately sick of me talking about it. I was like, I haven't even started writing the outline yet. This is good. This is good for us.
No, dude, that's good. The next couple of weeks, listeners, while Kevin and I research our next battle, we got some pretty cool guests that are going to be on the show for some At Ease episodes. I got some cool people lined up. Kevin, I hope you do as well as we navigate the summer. As you can see, listeners, we're dedicated because, me and Kevin are in two different spots on the planet right now.
Yes. And all you listeners, thank you guys for listening to our dog farts episode.
Dude, you guys responded well to that.
That was great because I had to edit that one in Idaho, and I have like 8 nieces and nephews that were all watching Blippi at the same time for bed, and I took over the bandwidth on accident, exporting the audio of it, and the house turned into chaos, and it was all my fault.
Shout out to Blippi, a fellow veteran buddy. We should have him on the show.
Is he a veteran?
He was in the Air Force, yeah.
The Chair Force. You got me on all these like.
I try to be nice. I try to be nice.
No, I'm saying you got me onto these military influencer people that are funny, and so like I'm learning all these new slang things that I shouldn't know.
Air Force is a big one, yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, we got some good we're not stopping. Basically, listeners. Just because we got plans over the summer does not mean we're going anywhere. And yeah, like Kevin said, dude, so grateful for everyone who's been listening lately. It's been really fun, dude.
And people
I love this.
People have been reaching out to me, like I'm getting DMs now and stuff.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it's been super fun. So like on dog farts, when Ben made the comment about the zombie city, like how cities are turning into zombies.
Yeah.
I got some articles to the contrary, and I was really opened my eyes to it about that.
Oh,
like
interesting.
Like a doom cycle thing, like that they were giving me the opposite side of that. It was really cool reading.
Yeah, I had somebody reach out from Colorado after the dog farts episode and ask how they can support the show. So listeners, if you want to know how to do that, you can go to our bio and you can click the support link, and you can sign up for 99 cents a month, which is like, it would go a long way. And that's like, you spend more on coffee a month. Come on, you can do it. If not, also no big deal. Thank you for being here. Yeah, it's all good.
Keep it free.
Yeah. Other than that, dude, thank you, listeners, for being here. If you made it the entire Gaul, dude, you guys are awesome. So thank you for being on this journey, and we are super excited for the next couple of battles that we got lined up. And until next time, bonsai.